Morning.
Good morning. They
Le-
work.
First up,
I know.
damn. So, shall we get this day started? My name's Carrie Seifer. I'm the Chief Customer Officer at GWI. We're a consumer marketing tech platform where people come for views and behaviors of 3 billion consumers around the world. I'm not why you're here, I'm afraid. I get the sense it's Stephanie, so I'll let her introduce herself.
Good morning. I'm Stephanie Jacoby. I'm SVP of Global Smirnoff at Diageo, which is the world's largest supplier of spirits and beer. So you're probably very familiar with our portfolio if you're not familiar with Diageo.
So we're going to dig in and learn a little bit about your role and what it's like being maybe a woman in the spirits category these days.
Well, I've been at Diageo for 15 years. I actually started at Diageo as an intern. And from the very beginning, the thing I loved about Diageo was there was actually, when I was an intern, the CMO at the time for North America was a woman. And I remember how, intelligent and stylish she was, and the way she held a room and how credible she was seen by everyone. And prior to that experience in my career, I kind of always felt like if I was too stylishly dressed or self-expressive, that it would undermine my credibility. And as someone who started, in the late 90s in the dot-com boom in the tech space that was very male-dominated, for me that was like a revelation that you could be fully who you were and be really respected because of it.
That is interesting. We could do a whole panel on that, but I suspect they're not going to let me. But I could definitely dig into that. It is really, really interesting because also a lot of young people, I don't know if you guys are witnessing, who came into the workforce through the pandemic, don't know how to present themselves. They've been working from home. And I don't know about you, but I'm not touching that one with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting topic. So just for the content team for the next time.
Yeah.
But it does transition really nicely to another topic I'm going to dig in specifically because you've got some stories about how you guys have navigated DEI in this space. It sounds like it's very deep within your ethos naturally, but even if it's deep in your ethos, it's very frothy waters these days, especially in the spirits category. So can you talk a little bit about how you guys approach it and how you balance that sort of authenticity?
Yeah, I think the wonderful thing about Diageo is we've been committed to DE&I for a very long time. And I've really seen, we've always been a leader in the industry, but honestly, it was an industry with a lot of room, right? And it needed leadership. And there's still opportunity, right, for better representation across the board, but Diageo was a very early champion of that. And I think where it all started, we talked earlier, I heard someone mention allyship, and while I've had many powerful women leaders that have been really inspiring role models in my career, the power of male allyship has been huge, and actually I give so much credit to Ivan Menezes, our CEO for over a decade, who recently passed away. But he was such a huge champion and really believed that we would be better, that the creative would be better if we were more representative of the consumers that we serve. And from being in very male-dominated rooms early in my career to now having a board that is 60% female, 45% of our executive leadership globally is female, and we're a 28,000 employee organization around the world. And our new CEO that Ivan brought in to be his successor is a woman, Deborah Crew. So it's really amazing, and I think in all of this and what we've seen go down in the industry over the last few months, and we saw a lot of people kind of pulling away from the DE&I conversation. And I think in this moment, it's very important to be a brand and a company that's been living this belief for a long time. And I think since 1864, Smirnoff has been a brand for everyone. It was literally a vodka created for the people, not the czars. And that's so deeply embedded into our DNA.
That's not lost on me.
I know.
The czars.
Deeply embedded into our DNA, deeply embedded into our corporate culture, deeply embedded into how we do marketing, from the progressive portrayal work that we do to being a founding member of the Unstereotype Alliance, which I'll be speaking at tomorrow. It just gives you that confidence of, this is not a flash in the pan. This is not something we woke up a year ago and decided to start talking about. This is something that we're committed to. And when we say we're a brand for everyone, we mean we're for everyone. And that's unwavering.
So it's interesting because you can think of what it was probably like in the boardroom at Nike when they decided to put Colin Kaepernick in an ad. And you can think about what it was probably like at AB and Bev when they decided to put a can with transgender Dylan on it, and the debates that went down. Are there debates inside of Smirnoff and Diageo? Like in those boardrooms, how do you guys talk about it and make sure? Because Smirnoff's reaction to everything that happened was beautiful and genius and good for business. So you kept your DNA, but you also made good business decisions. So how did you make sure in that moment, in that room, you weren't, because those are the moments where wavering occurs.
Yeah.
And you saw it occur with AB and Bev, where they went there and then they went back. And
Yeah.
it was actually the going back that now they're saying is the thing that caused the harm in sales.
Yeah.
So like, can you just like bring us into the room for a moment and
Yeah.
tell us how the debate looked?
You know, early in my career, I got some advice on this that I think has served as such a North Star. This goes back to my time on Johnny Walker. I've worked on a lot of amazing brands at Diageo. And it all comes down to the brand values. You know, if you are operating from your values and being true to those values, consumers will recognize that. And it's never about getting political. Like, we don't want to get political. We're a drinks business. Consumers enjoy coming together over a delicious cocktail, right? And we're for everyone. That means everyone. So we don't want to be divisive in any way because, again, our core is about being inclusive. The party's better when everyone's invited and everyone has a seat at the table. And so I think that simple principle as a North Star then guides how we do things. And it's not about taking sides or specific groups. It's about the overarching belief. And that's really important. And it kind of always comes back to that, because you're right. These are moments that test the brand's values and test your commitment. But consumers are watching.
You know, it is interesting because you went basically, there probably was some debate, you go back to the North Star, back to the North Star, and that should be the thing that wins, which is interesting. The other thing I sort of have witnessed about your brand in particular is your use of data as a North Star for also things like product innovation.
Yes.
And so I was curious sort of how you guys look at data, whether it's first, second, or third, and how maybe some examples like with the Tamarind rollout, how you've used it to create product for everyone, and then frankly, decision-making, whether to make it bigger or sunset it.
Yeah. I am such a data nerd. I love data. And it's actually my favorite thing about brand marketing is like where data nerdiness meets like creative flair. And so I'm always looking for the data because that's where the insights are. And then that gives you that awesome, like, what's the tension? What's the jumping off point? And we have a product called Smirnoff Spicy Tamarind. Has anyone seen it or tried it? Okay. It's probably more targeted to like an LPA, legal drinking age to 24 consumer. So you're forgiven. But if you see it, try it. Tasting is believing. Anyway, Spicy Tamarind is a flavor profile that was launched in our Mexican market. And, you know, it's a emotive flavor for Mexican consumers, very familiar. And it wasn't just the flavor. What we've learned on Smirnoff is any brand can do a flavor, But flavors can be experiences. They can tap into memory. And so spicy tamarind is a flavor that does that. In addition, we used it in terms of understanding what are the occasions that are growing, right? And in Mexico, the occasion that was really growing was a more kind of high energy, what we call on-premise bars and restaurants occasion, and tequila was really winning. And, we kind of looked at that and went, you know what, Smirnoff is a disruptive brand. We're a clear spirit that can wear the codes and clothes of other categories. And it was all about going squarely after that occasion with a delicious offering that tapped into emotion through flavor. And so it started in Mexico, and, people just watched it go gangbusters. And even within Diageo, and I think anybody who works in a global organization, you experience this where it's kind of like, oh, that's nice for them, but that would never really work over here. And as you see Mexican culture, we always talk about Mexico to the world, right? I mean, Mexican culture, Mexican food culture. I mean, you see Day of the Dead, right, in the US. It has become such a part of American culture for sure. But even traveling all over the world. So we see Mexican culture. I mean, I go to South Africa and you see Mexican cuisine influencing the local cuisine. And so we kind of started talking to the markets about, you see tequila growing in your market, you're seeing the influence of Mexican flavors, give spicy tamarind a chance. So, and we had all the data to back it up, right? So to your point, we have all the data showing Mexican flavors are exploding. Spicy is exploding. I mean, how many people have seen a spicy margarita on a menu recently? Yeah? That's happening everywhere. So it's both about the flavor, but it's about spicy. And so when you can come to the markets, whether that market is markets that are launching in Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, the UK, Canada, Brazil, all those markets, you're showing them data of how Mexican culture has arrived in their country and how spicy is a trend with their consumers. So often for us, it's about the global data, but also being able to localize it for our markets and build belief.
Have you watched Hot Ones?
What's that?
It's a show where they
Ava
interview
Longoria.
someone
Yeah.
over a celebrity over wings, and the wings progressively get hotter.
I have not.
And so that meme with Jennifer Lawrence where she's like, "What do you mean? What do you mean?" And
Yeah.
she's crying because she's on her like 8th wing, losing herself. Anyway, we're not trying to plug that, but it is true.
I
It's
should add a meme from that.
But
to
it's
one
a
of my
perfect Venn
presentations.
diagram of all
Yeah.
sorts of trends that you
Trends.
were able to capture literally in a bottle.
Yeah. A bottle.
And it sounds like you were rewarded for it. Now you're going to roll it out to more markets?
Yeah, now we're rolling it out to more markets. It's going to be one of our biggest SKUs in the portfolio behind kind of original ice, Smirnoff Spicy Tamarind is well on its way to being number 3, which is unbelievable given that it was a Mexico innovation. That's how it started.
So was there someone in that boardroom that was like, this will never fly, and you were like just presented the data to be
Yeah.
like, let's try it?
It's, there's been lots of people, lots of very senior people saying that'll never work. And it's been the data, but it's also been building passionate believers within the organization. So, within our, for example, our UK innovation team, we have a team there that believes passionately in the opportunity. So whereas I might not have as much influence with their senior stakeholders in that market, they have a huge amount of credibility and influence in those stakeholders. So sometimes it's about how do you inform that matrix of influence and then fan the flames where you find real ambassadors for your ideas.
Nice. I have a few more questions, but also just wanted to allow you guys to chat it up too. Any questions from the audience, or should I just keep trucking? See, the coffee sucks.
It is early.
Yeah, we need new coffee. We need better coffee. He's like, leave me alone. Okay, one thing that's really interesting is all the brands that you probably see up here, let's say a CPG brand, is like all of these marketing issues to contend with. But when you're a spirits brand,
Yeah.
you also have to counter it with regulation.
Yep.
And so how do you approach innovation, fun, and all those other ethos? And then you've got regulation coming at you too. Where does that come into the conversation? How do you balance?
Yeah. I mean, I think with regulation, I mean, it's always the idea of creativity, loving constraint, right? Which is really true. But I think we also deeply believe in the importance of responsible drinking. And our purpose at Diageo is to celebrate life every day around the world. And we really do mean celebrate. And I think we all know that the products we create are part of really special moments in people's lives, and that's wonderful. But we also have a really important role to ensure that we are not getting into the hands of the wrong consumers, that we are not promoting irresponsible choices or irresponsible partnerships. And we hold ourselves to a really high standard there. And we see ourselves as an industry leader. And Diageo, although there are definitely regulations in place, our whole philosophy is let's regulate ourselves before anybody else has to regulate us, and therefore set the standard in the industry for what this should look like. And that includes, 20% of our A&P every year going to responsible drinking messages. We have a whole 0.0 portfolio of products that are being developed. Guinness 0.0 is available now in the US for my Guinness adorers in the audience, recognizing that, the legal drinking age Gen Z consumers are thankfully making good choices when it comes to responsible alcohol consumption, and us really thinking about how do we create a portfolio of offerings that makes them feel included in the celebrations, and just recognizes the importance of those choices. And I think, the wonderful thing is that consumers also recognize the importance of what we're messaging. And one of my very favorite ads, oftentimes our very favorite ads by consumers, from consumers, are the responsible drinking ads. And one of my favorites from all time is Captain Morgan has a spot, if anybody, this is from a while ago, so I'm showing my age, but where these two guys, they've been out, they've had a good night, and they walk into a pizza place, they order a pizza, and then get the delivery guy to drive them home. And it's just such a fun, lovely, it builds the equity of Captain Morgan in a really credible way, but also a really nice message about getting home safely. So, it's something we are proud to do. And as a mother, it's hugely important to me, hugely.
That's so nice, because I was thinking of it as something to contend with, and you're like, no, we embrace it. We own it. And it's almost become part of what you put into the campaign as, almost the same way you add data, add regulation. That's really cool. Any other questions? We've got 2 more minutes. Go for it.
Yeah. Yep. Yes.
So, were there success metrics that you set ahead of time to say, okay, we got something here, let's definitely take the next step in rolling this out in the US?
Yeah. I won't say that we did that from the start. From the start, it started as a local, not even a full-time SKU, a limited edition launch. And therefore, that enabled us to go fast, relatively few stakeholders that were involved in the decision-making. And it wasn't until a year later where it just literally kept growing and growing, and it was incremental growth. I think that's always the thing we really look for, is that incrementality to other products in the portfolio. And we saw the incrementality to Smirnoff, and we saw that the majority of the volume was coming from tequila. And that's when we were like, oh, we got something different on our hands. And it actually expanded the thinking around it, right? It was like, this isn't just a fun flavor, which that alone was really cool, and the packaging is awesome. It glowed in the dark. I mean, it was great. But when you go, oh my gosh, tequila is the biggest spirit in Mexico, and we've got something that can fight it, that was the moment that you're kind of like, okay, there's something to this. And the next market we rolled it out to was North America. And in North America, obviously a huge Mexican population. And even in North America at the beginning, they were like, oh yeah, but this is only going to work in markets like Houston, LA, like the heavy Mexican markets. And that's where it started in the first year. We did kind of regional test markets. And again, the went gangbusters. So just like rate of sale through the roof. We couldn't keep it in stock. And that was the thing that then had all of the other markets in the US leaning in and going, oh, we want this too. And then even the targeting and the way we talked about it went from kind of the Mexican Latinx population that would be familiar with this specific flavor to spicy enthusiasts. And that was the key change. And then linking it to the data around how popular spicy is, spicy margaritas. And that was the thing that got everybody leaning in. And then the US, because it's our biggest market, once that starts having success, you get markets all over the world leaning in and, again, wanting to know what's going on and wanting a part of it. So it was,
Cool.
a multi-year build.
Yeah, it's like allowed for innovation. I'll leave you with the final stat because that's how I roll, which is something that Smirnoff already gets. But less than 10% of people interviewed said that they see themselves represented in the ads that they see. So that's when you ask everyone. So no one's seeing themselves represented. And when asked what would help you, they say not just photos that look like them, but food, drink, and music. So a lot of these brands are trying to better represent a cross-section of humanity, and yet they're just plopping a picture, but playing the wrong music, putting the wrong food and the wrong spirits on that table in that ad. And so it's got to be these other things too that comes naturally to you, but probably not to other brands. Thank you guys so much. Thanks for letting us kick off the day with a little alcohol. That seems appropriate.
Should have had Bloody Marys.